What's up? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another week of the See Us podcast brought to you by the Narrative Justice. I am your hostess with the mostest, Shannon Hughes. As always, we like to start off by honoring Leroy Powell. If you're unfamiliar, Leroy Powell was 15 years old in 2014. He was a witness in an attempted murder turned infanticide. And his witness statement was played during the preliminary hearing, which our local news decided that that was a good idea to play his witness statement on the 11 o'clock news. And so immediately, Leroy and his mother, for real, received death threats. And several days later, Leroy lost his life. That is a direct cause for Leroy's life was our local media not taking his life seriously. This was a 15-year-old boy sitting next to his mother. The video, if you've seen it, was of him sitting next to his mother. It was completely, shown. He wasn't blocked out. His voice wasn't distorted or anything initially. Eventually, they did it, like after the damage was already done. But initially they did not. And the fact that it was played on the news at all was ridiculous. And the child lost his life. So it is important that we always hold our local media accountable for the ways, especially when they show up in our communities, when it comes to Black and brown bodies. They know how to not, show up and speak on trigger warning suicide victims. There's an unspoken agreement that they won't do that, but they don't do this. They have that same courtesy when it comes to Black and brown bodies. So we always honor and uplift Leroy Powell and his mother. She was super strong during that time, and was very aware of who took her baby. As a reminder, it only takes about 25% of the community for change to occur. So don't ever think that your voice is not strong enough. Everybody's voice is strong enough. So if it's just you and your 4 friends, cool. Like that's all you need is you and your 4 friends to start the movement. Do not be deterred. Do not feel like you're not valid enough. If the issue is an issue, we need somebody to spark it off. Like that 25% will get us going. So like always feel confident in that your voice is strong enough. Otherwise, we continue to deal with the madness that goes on here. Quick update. So as you know, we've been following and participating really in the Homewood water crisis since we've learned about it, right? Like the water crisis itself has been going on 5 years now. And if you're unfamiliar, if you haven't caught us talking about it, essentially in 2017, there was work done on Fuchsia Way, right behind Miss Tanya Todd's house, Tanya McClendon Todd's house, on a sinkhole. The sinkhole originally was no bigger than the size of a chair. That grew to be larger than her house. Like she said, it was like larger than her house and expanded even further into her neighbor's home, or like the length of her neighbor's home as well. After that work that was done on the sinkhole by PWSA and Penn Joint Water Authority, then she and a number of her other neighbors started experiencing water issues, backing up into water in sewage, raw sewage, backing up into their basements. This has been going on since 2017. And the way that PWSA and Penn Joint, the way PWSA has responded is, that's y'all fault. Like y'all did it. It's on you. As a matter of fact, not even y'all, Miss Tanya, it's your fault that you and your neighbors are experiencing this water crisis, like the sewage backup at the very exact time, the same time as each other. Excuse me. So that's absolutely ridiculous, we feel. So we are pressing that PWSA, not only just PWSA, and Penn Joint Water is pretty much like, whatever. PWSA, Penn Joint Water, and the city of Pittsburgh are accountable for this infrastructure issue, right? Like the more we talk about it, we learn about new people who are also living with this issue, right? Like in all of this time, they thought that like, oh, this is just my issue. Like it's just been my house. And that's not the case. I learned I think yesterday, another person who was experiencing the same issue and had no idea that this was a thing that was going on in their neighborhood. So if you are someone who has been impacted by this water crisis, you've been dealing with water and raw sewage backing up into your basement, please reach out to Miss Tanya McClendon Todd. Her number is 412-357-6525. Her email is Tanya, that's Tanya, D as in dog, T as in Tom, 7@gmail.com. Super, super important. The last I'll say on that is this past Wednesday, Miss Tanya and the residents, they held a walking tour for several of our elected officials so that they can see with their own eyes what they've been dealing with. Like this is not a little thing. It's not at all. And there were representatives. We didn't have any actual elected officials who showed up, but there were several who sent their staff people. So Jay Costa sent his staff person, Ed Gainey sent his staff person, and Senator Williams sent her staff person. Bill Peduto has not shown up for any invitation regarding this water issue, this water crisis. The public hearing that was held on July 8th, I believe he RSVP. Now don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he RSVP, but did not send anybody, did not show up, and did not show up to this either. So we are imploring the current mayor. Now, I know he ain't going to be the mayor for much longer, but you're still the mayor, dude. Like, and if you campaign on Homewood specifically, how much you care about Homewood, then we expect you to actually show up for the people when they actually need you. And that also goes for Reverend Ricky Burgess, who's the council person in District 9, who has not been responsive to this at all either. I do believe he had a conversation with Ms. Tanya at some point in time, but if my memory serves me correctly, that was pretty much out of my hands and has been completely unresponsive either. Make no mistake, this is an infrastructure issue. Therefore, it is a city of Pittsburgh issue. And it's an all of us issue. There's already neighbors who've been displaced. Like, I know several folks have been displaced. The residents know several folks who have been displaced. And there are people currently planning to move because they cannot deal with this. That is wild. That is wild. In a time where the city of Pittsburgh is actively being gentrified. Anyway, so if you would like to reach out, even if if you're not in Homewood, not being currently impacted by the water issue, if you want to get involved, if you want to help Ms. Tanya and the residents show their support, definitely reach out to Ms. Tanya. Again, that number 412-357-6525. Email is Tanya, Tanya, D as in dog, T as in Tom, 7@gmail.com. And the last thing I'll say, starting out, well, last couple of things. The first thing I'll say is, the moratorium on the rent is going to lift, I believe, the 31st of this month. It's a super, super scary time. Like, folks are already like, their utilities are being shut off left and right. And the landlords are gearing up to teeing themselves up to evict folks. So if you are a person who is in need of rent relief, rent and utility support, definitely hit up, you can go online, it's covidrentrelief.alleghenycounty.us, or you can come down to our drop-in center. The Wellness Collective is running a drop-in center in McKeesport, 337 Fifth Avenue, McKeesport, PA, 15132. We're there Monday through Friday, 10 to 6 most days. Thursday is 12 to 8. But if you want to come down and apply for rent relief, or we also have a food pantry and a closet with free stuff, you're free to come down and grab whatever you need. Or if you just want to kind of hang out and be in the space, you can do that too. So I ran my mouth a lot, as I always do, starting out. So I'm excited about this this episode. I have my homegirl coming on, Amber Thompson. She runs this super dope group, and from the time that she told me about it, I was like, that's so necessary. Like, it's so necessary. Accountability is love. Y'all have heard me say this many a time. I'm always going to say it. Accountability is love. And when we are in positions where there's a hierarchy, accountability is absolutely essential. So I'm going to let Amber come on and tell her own story. So we're going to introduce Amber Thompson. What's up, girl? How are you?
Hey, Shannon. Thank you for having me. Thanks for all the updates and, thinking about what we need to be doing collectively.
Word up, word up. I absolutely love that about you, because every time there's something to be done, I just see on your face, the wheels spinning, all right, this is jacked up. What we finna do about it? And I appreciate that from anybody who has that heart.
Yeah, I'm definitely over here, definitely thinking interesting that our elected officials do not see this as their responsibility. What are you elected for then? What's your sole purpose? State representatives and city council person?
Exactly. So as I was talking, I was peeping how your body was morphing around that new information, because it is wild, right? And also let's not yes, her hair is everything. Got a shout out for your hair. Let's not slide past the point that we are literally in a global pandemic where people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people have been dying on a regular basis. And a lot of those people, especially in the States, have been Black folks. And we're in this global pandemic where like personal hygiene and collective hygiene is like the thing that's saving lives. And the city of Pittsburgh, PWSA, and Penn Joint Water, and some of our electeds have known about this water crisis and have said nothing publicly. Like I just happened to find out about it because I was connected with Miss Tanya in thinking that, you know, we just need to fix and help her with her house because there's something going on with the plumbing issue. Lo and behold, it's this whole other thing that's, you know, like no fundraiser like for an individual is going to solve that issue, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, I would, yeah, definitely have some thoughts and some comments that I would like to share. But more importantly, like folks need to speak up, especially we have all this money coming to the region. Ricky Burgess is part of the equity task force on city council. So there's no, I mean, why aren't we directing this hundreds of millions of dollars towards the Black communities that they supposedly are helping with their proposal? So I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, a lot of questions, right? A lot of questions. Someone had asked really quickly which news station was it responsible for. I'm assuming it was responsible for Leroy losing his life. It was a while ago. I remember watching it with my own eyes, and I remember watching it more. I don't want to speak on the one that I'm thinking it is. I've always kind of had in mind like that is this particular news station, but I don't know for sure, so I can't necessarily say it. Just know, like, you know, we have very few local like legacy media outlets, right? And it was one of the broadcast networks. So, you know, and in either, even though it was one broadcast network that originally posted it with Leroy, all of them followed suit. So don't think any of them are innocent. They've all followed suit. They're all guilty as far as I'm concerned. So that's that. But anyway, back to you, Amber. Where are you from first?
So I'm from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I went to school like outside the city. So I'm from like a borough, Franklin Borough. Super poor, still super poor. I had a great childhood though. We did, you know, played outside the rivers. It's very, very nature, a lot of nature around us. Yeah, so from not too much different than Pittsburgh, you know, used to be a still town. Not bounced back, but it's trying. So there's that. But yeah.
Okay, word. And how'd you get here? My guess is school or work, because that's the only reason why people come to Pittsburgh.
Right. That was exactly it. I went to WVU and transferred to Point Park. Played volleyball, and then my last semester I got pregnant, and my daughter, she's basically the driver for everything I do in my life, but she was born with epilepsy and, you know, like just unable to do anything with life. Oops, that was a glass. Unable to do anything with life at that point. So, you know, I stayed, and I'm still here today.
Okay, word up, word up. Shout out to the babies. Well, baby, but all the babies too. What did you study at WVU then Point Park?
I'm kind of a creature of habit, so my majors never really changed. I wasn't that student, but I was a double major at sociology and anthropology at WVU, and then Point Park. I just stuck with sociology. I had a professor who was doing her from UPenn, doing her dissertation on something around housing, and at that time, New York City, New Jersey, and Philadelphia were sending their HUD applicants to State College, Erie, Johnstown, and Pittsburgh, because we had openings in these spaces on this side of the state. So they were sending people from New York and Philly and New Jersey to over here. And she was researching in State College and just talking, like, her major's in anthropology, and just talking about the stories, the racism, what State College did, those wealthy folks just pushing out Black folks and poor people that were coming from Philly and New York, and not not like actually trying to, thank you, not like actually trying to address the issue, just researching. And I was just like, what's the purpose of anthropology if you're not actually going to protect the people? Like you have like some kind of ethical like part of this, right? Like, aren't you supposed to like tell people that these people are like going to come at you with pitchforks and fires tomorrow? Like, aren't you supposed to do something? And she's like, no, not anthropology. I was like, oh, well, that's my cue. I'm out. There would be no applied anthropology. It's either you're helping the folks you're doing this for, or you're not helpful. So same thing. So in Point Park, I love Point Park, my social program there. At that time, got I think he's a dean of the liberal arts school now, but he was a professor. He was like running a group of psychologists at the new DSM was coming out. This was like in 2009, 2010. And he was running a group against the new DSM. It's like, no, this is problematic. This is hurtful. We're not doing this. So that was being part of that. And undergrad was, so yeah, that's my school journey.
All of that makes sense. All of it makes sense. I've always wondered, well, not really wondered, but it's one of those things that stick in my mind about, the folks who study social issues or whatever, but they're not involved in that. It's not that I don't understand why that is. You can't overlook the fact that how wrong it is. Like all of these people are like living in complete destruction due to all of these issues or whatever. Well, here's our report. Bye. Like
exactly.
Like most unlivable city for Black women. All right, bye. Like nothing has it's so disconnected from life, and it's the wildest thing.
Yeah, like here's your report. Have a nice day. I don't get it either. I have a cousin he's in a PhD program at State College right now, and I think his like dissertation's like Black Femme Queer Theory will save us. And I'm just like, yes, it will. But in practice, what are you gonna do with this? Like, I could take your research and do something with it, but what are you, like, as the researcher, what are you gonna do with it?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't necessarily fault the people, but it's like the systems that are created for like research to happen, the doctoral programs, et cetera, like they're not connected to anything. It's just like you're just doing this thing so you can be published for real. That's how it feels to me. Like, and in practice, that's kind of what it is though. There's like all of the like grad students every year churning out like doing like pouring in this hard work into research and whatever else. And it's like really like, important, heavy information, and it just goes into somebody's book, and then that's it. Like, unless somebody does all of this labor to pull it out of whatever and then connect it to a bunch of other things, when the system itself could just be connected that way. Like the purpose of doctoral programs could be for like the purpose of advancing life. It could just be that way. And it's not, which is weird.
It's certain. And I know like at State College, they're dealing with a whole bunch of racism, especially around faculty right now. And it's kind of like the issues that he's had trying to get his paper approved is just kind of like, oh, this is why y'all don't want to, you actually don't want to do anything. You don't want to solve this. You want it to fit in your cookie cutter little box, and your philosophies to just be driven by white men. So no, you don't want to do anything. So it's definitely like hard for those folks like that. But there's a way to pull those researchers into practice if they're connected to some kind of organizing. And that's also, fault of organizing and activism. We need to reach into the institutions as well, and be that first ear on them kids, because like they're their story that we don't want them to get, right? So we need to take that action internally as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Connecting all of this, like all of this is systems, like all of these things are systems, and the more disjointed we are, like like we're just going to be running around in circles as we do. So I think that's a good point. Like the activism, like activists and advocates and such, and the organizers being connected to this really, really important information. Yeah, absolutely. So how did you How did you come about the idea of your business? Like what sparked the idea? And then what was the moment where you decided like, okay, this is what I'm doing?
Well, I went to grad school at Penn State and I majored. There's several flags I should have had around this major and being in Pittsburgh, but I majored in organization development change, and the program I'm working in, I needed to do like a full time grad internship. So I need to be paid because there's no way I could do 40 to 50 hours, and it needs to be a livable, very livable, because I'm an adult with a child. And I need to be able to produce like a tangible product, something that the company is going to use. So I'm just like trying to find internships in Pittsburgh and OD. And this was in 2018. I had to move at the same year that gender equity report came out, because everyone around me is like, you should be able to do that. You should be. No, I can't do it here. So I applied for a program in Philadelphia working at QVC. Working a grad internship with their diversity inclusion department. They were going through a rebrand. So at the first I was like locally, like nationally in Philadelphia. But like within a week, they turned into Curate Retail Group, which is a international broadcasting and media and retail company working with HSN, Zulily, QVC, and doing my job globally. So I got to do so many cool projects working on like affinity groups. I developed like part of developing the first women's resource group. I was defining an African-American affinity group, which interviewing with other corporate diversity groups, like, why do you have that? There's a women's group and there's a Black person's group. I'm like, that's why diversity inclusion will never say like, I'm not going to touch that. But point being, we created like an Afro-Latina group and got a whole bunch of Black women from different ethnicities and backgrounds together. Just did some underground work. I learned how to do a bunch of data collection and different like mixed method uses, because I couldn't do things that could be on our calendars. I couldn't do things that I could produce reports or briefs about. I couldn't communicate, so everything had to be coded so it could still be used, but used in a way that it would push something forward. So a lot of I did the quantitative and qualitative analysis for my department's presentations. So I had to be, if I had a conversation about the concrete ceiling, I couldn't say, well, in IT, it looks like this, and in finance, it looks like this, because there's only 2 Black people in a global company that are in these departments. So I had to figure out, like, how can I make this not situational, but make it about the system? How can I bring the actual tangible parts of the systematic ways that this is happening, so I don't have to identify and call out people? So even part of our employee surveys, I was the mastermind behind, like, let's throw out the D&I questions because they're going to target people. And let's just identify like inclusive and equity inside of other department questions, like our comps and benefits, like our culture, things like that. Like, how can we bring that in? So I had to move back to Pittsburgh after my internship ended. I got a job at a law firm, but having child in custody and all that stuff made me come back. So I had to come back. And I knew I couldn't do what I was doing in Philly and Pittsburgh, because what I was doing in Philly wasn't being done globally. So I just started my own consulting firm, focusing on root cause analysis, doing organization development, but through race, gender, and equity, and really focusing on like the implementation of change. And I did it in an equity entrepreneurial cohort at Idea Foundry. And I was working with some Coro fellows, and they're just like, it would be great if I knew what companies were working with you. It would be great if I knew what companies were actually talking about the things and who you're consulting, because I can't, that's part of my contracts. But I was like, let's just create a platform. We can see the things I'm talking about in other countries or other companies, and we could create a platform. So it came out with that, and I launched last year, got a whole bunch of feedback from a lot of like Black executives saying it's not anonymized enough. It's not anonymized enough. And one of my advisors were like, well, you do root cause analysis. Why don't you just put on there what you want them to do? So that's where I am today. And that's exactly what I did. Just build a huge equity index, focusing on intersectionality and using first and third person. So we are anonymizing it. It's anonymous at the beginning with your login. Don't use your employer's technology, because they can, part of our contract, we want them to turn off that software, the VPNs that track your use. But essentially, it's anonymous in multiple ways because of the type of work that I had to do, the type of people I had to protect, and the type of information that I'm collecting in corporate and nonprofit spaces.
Word up, word up. So your company is Conscious Unbias, right? So as an employee, like as a user, what does this look like? What's the value there for me?
The value for you currently right now without the employer pages is seeing what your company should be doing. I think a lot of the folks who took the first version, even white people, were shocked by how little their companies were doing in comparison to other companies. So these are objective things that companies should be doing. It's not a matter of cost. It's not a matter of design. It's a matter of want and will and action. And a lot of my colleagues were just like, should I be talking to my HR? Yes, you should be talking to your HR, but also don't trust HR, right? I talk to your colleagues, start communicating, being open about, do you care about these things? Having value conversations with with your bosses and your one-on-ones, and paying attention to all hands or whatever your organizational meetings are. And getting that value and having shared language. This is a space you can come and see, okay, this is how it translates in this space. These are inequities. Okay, now I understand how to make this do something. Now I understand measuring. Once we launch the employer pages, you'll be able to see what your employers are doing in regards to those questions. You'll be able to see the performative versus transactional versus transformational, and see the milestones that they're working towards. And the companies that don't want to engage, that's where you divest. Companies who don't want to be transparent about the challenges they're having and how they're fixing them, we probably should not be working there. We probably shouldn't be buying products from them either. But
so it sounds like as far as like a user, and when I say user, I'm thinking employee rather, that would fit within like this current model is someone who can afford to like kind of see through, kind of checking in with their employers to see like, all right, are they doing these things? Versus I'm thinking like someone who kind of has like that space to follow up, to research, to, add in whatever information they can, versus someone who is in crisis. Am I hearing that correctly?
We are moving towards things in crisis. So right now, I would say it's for folks who want to be proactive, and also if they're in reaction. Now I can see other companies that have responded like this and haven't. What I do want to offer is legal services. Right now, whenever we do our next launch, identify those services, because I know in Pittsburgh, our pro bono legal services don't cover employers. New York's does. I would love to bring something like that to regions that don't have it, but we don't know where it's not at. And I'm sure a lot of people in Pittsburgh don't even know that's an option unless they have money to get private attorney fees. But there are options out there where there are pro bono services to represent employees. Also, organizing, right? There are so many folks in corporate spaces or who are at entry level places who just don't know how to actually identify what to organize around. And seeing how many other folks are experiencing what they're experiencing. Once you see how many other people are experiencing what you're experiencing, you're able to start building some kind of grassroots movement outside of your organization, or even outside of your leaders knowing you're doing it in your company. And that's where the protection happens, and that's where we need it the most. We can't hold people accountable if they know that we're the ones telling folks about what's going on. So it's like a whisper network, right? We're telling you what's happening, but you don't know it's coming from me, but you know it's coming from a credible source. So there will be services for people in crisis. And right now I'm just trying to build those partnerships.
Right. So I have so many thoughts right now on that. First of all, I'm thinking about, like, as this continues on, like, just by the natural progression of what you're doing is going to create that sort of like that roadmap of this is what's acceptable and this is what's not. And so an employer who's, say, acting outside of that, then there's like an automatic, like, means for accountability, because, like, we're all on the same page about what this looks like and why it's important, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I see as far as like a natural progression. Another thing that's on my mind, I'm thinking about you saying, like, there's not really great pro bono employer lawyer stuff happening in Pittsburgh. Is that a Pittsburgh thing, or is that a Pennsylvania thing? Because I'm thinking about the what is it? What's the thing where, like, an employer can just, like, fire you, or you can just quit? What am I thinking about?
At will.
At will. Yeah, it's an at will state. So does that have anything to do with, like, it's not really having pro bono employment lawyers, or is that separate?
No, being an at will, I think a majority of the countries are at will states. It's mainly the issues that we encounter as persons of color is what I'll put in quotations, because that's what it is. We are protected classes. So the things that we're being retaliated against has nothing to do with our at will employment. So if you're firing me because I'm wearing my natural hair, that's like an easy, that's very low hanging fruit for an attorney. I think it's more about resources and actual, like, the economic development competency of your region. So there are pro bono services in Philly, but Philadelphia is a major metro and a very major metro region. The state of New York has it for the entire state of New York. So I think it's a matter of, like, just seeing that being a resource or a need, and how do we fund something like that. So, but this is popping up all over the country right now because of the type of space folks are in. So these are easy wins, like, especially around accessibility issues. Even your website opens you up for an easy lawsuit. So it's just a matter of, like, if we're having those things, but I don't know where else they don't have this, or I didn't even know how at scale we could do something like that in Pennsylvania, but we don't know how much of a need it is until we start identifying. I know at least 5 Black women in this city of Pittsburgh suing major companies right now, like active lawsuits, at least 5. And I've met probably a dozen more outside of Pittsburgh but they have money and they have very good cases. So I think it's just a matter of, like, us finding that resource.
Yeah, definitely. And that puts my mind back in thinking about, like, what organizing can do. Because, like, in organizing, the natural, progression of that, like, is that you can find resources, like, if the intention is around that, right? It's just building our infrastructure, right? Like, that's what system building does. And organizing activism can be built as a system if we intend it to be. We don't have to fight with our bodies. Folks hear me say that all the time. Like, it's not effective to fight with our bodies. It's perfectly fine to start off that way, but we cannot continue to throw our bodies at systems. Like, our bodies will break down. The system won't. And that's just what it is. So let me ask you. So recently, there is a person in community who recently had posted on their Facebook regarding an incident that happened at their now former employer. They were there, and one of their superiors had made some racist comments, and they did go to the HR and report it. And what they experienced was what sounds like is retaliation. It sounds like their confidence was not held. And it felt like, or at least from what I read, was that they were now being targeted and they're in their place of employment to the point where they couldn't stay there any longer. Do you have any thoughts on that, Lori? How would Conscious Unbias fit into that space?
This is where I think Conscious Unbias shines, is that the tools that we can hold our employers accountable leave us room to make mistakes, and open us up to retaliation. But every time your employer does something like that, or if that's and other colleagues are seeing that, or it's probably happening to other people, that's mass engagement. And that's what we're trying to do, build mass engagement to expose that and give folks who are silenced, give folks who are marginalized, a voice, and amplified voice, right? Because it's the questions we're asking bring out, yes, I receive this type of racism, but we also identify the actual systems in the company to show how that racism is perpetuated and to show why it won't ever be corrected unless it's intentionally addressed. And building mass engagement around that, we're going to be tying those issues to their board governance, to the monies that they're donating outside of their companies, to how their leaders are donating, to the diversity of their leaders, to what's happening in the news, right? We are going to create a story, a holistic story of how folks experience that company internally, how they experience in leadership, how they experience it in their community, and amplifying that one situation and making it like, this isn't about a situation. This is about multiple systems. And this is about the barriers that this company is creating to perpetuate all types of issues that would look like that. So it's a great way to say, again, organizing, taking this from the ground and taking it from the putting the pressure on the individual and pushing it back on the companies and back on the system to course correct.
Word up. And still employers, but it makes me think about like the systems of policing and justice, how that's so sorely needed and necessary. Having been in community for over 10 years at this point, like the thing that our systems like to lean on is like, we don't know what you're talking about. Like there's no record of that. Like there's no real place to report. And in the places that we have to report misconduct are ran by the police or the city, which is the same thing. But anyway, I digress from that.
No, don't digress, because I want to even go on that further, right? Because down the line, what we're doing is benchmarking. We are benchmarking everything, not just companies, but municipalities, government, schools. And we're looking at it, our first industries are public safety, education, and the health systems. These systems, the carceral state itself, is because we don't have a place to publicly share that this is happening to me, because your reports I have to ask for from you. This data is owned and driven by communities. So our employer pages regarding our government system and our police stations are going to be connected, because now we see how much money municipalities or cities or state are giving to our police, and now we see how that money is driven and used in our communities, how over policing is happening. My brother gets pulled over in Avalon probably once every 2 weeks for the last year he's lived there. He has never received a ticket. So you will never see that this type of over policing and this type of bullying and time on the clock is wasted in our taxpayer dollars. But then also saying a police officer that is actively abusing the system before they kill people, we don't see that either. We hear those reports, but now we'll be able to see something like that. Again, holding all persons accountable, the companies that are paying into their pensions, the leaders that are voting and supporting this, the elected officials and legislators who are actively ignoring it. We're going to have accountability at a level that we haven't seen. Again, it's not a person. This is technology. This is a machine learning about discrimination and providing these systems where it's happening at. That's all this is. And you can't be mad at a machine.
Yes, all of that. Oh, I'm thinking about all the things, right? I'm thinking about the home with water crisis. This is obviously a infrastructure issue, but they're blaming residents, and not even residents, plural. They're blaming Miss Tanya McClendon Todd. Like, her house is somehow responsible for multi-homes on multi-streets having the exact same water issue that started at the exact same time. Dog, that makes no sense. Like, it makes absolutely no sense. I'm also thinking about our next week's show is going to feature Miss Courtney Tompkins. Shout out to her. Her son has been sitting in jail for the past year, Savance Williams, for something that, and I'm not going to get too far into it, but what I do know that there has not been an investigation. I do know that the little bit of investigation that took place did not render anything that put Savance in proximity or whatever they're talking about. And yet the public defender that he had was replaced with someone else who is now pushing for him to take a plea deal. And he's like, but I didn't do anything. And so it makes me think about like how often that is the case, where like Black kids, Black people with without the financial resources to buy, to pay for a decent lawyer, are forced and bullied and intimidated and taking plea deals and stuff, even when they know they have nothing to do with it. But it's like, if I don't take this plea deal, then I'm going to go to jail for the rest of my life, like.
But exactly. And think about like using PWSA and using this as a situation. The data we get on this is years behind. The data lag is the problem. If they collect data, we have, like our county data teams are very good, right? They're just very white. Also, the fact that it takes this long able to produce a report is ridiculous. So if this is happening to you at PWSA, go to Conscious Unbias and review PWSA. And that is, and looking at the court system. These are, again, something, if this happens to you, you report it. That is the machine itself collecting that information and putting out what's going to happen next, and producing the interventions that we should be seeing as well. So yeah, all of this to say that it happens, the data is collected, it's too late to respond. And after that, this man has lost his life and Miss Tanya's moving to Penn Hills or something. We're all screwed.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, it's not safe. It's not safe at all. Like, loss of life is a very real thing. But yeah. And I want to revisit. I know I just asked this, but I'm gonna ask again. So as a consumer, as a person, so like if we take the water crisis, PWSA and Penn Joint Water and the city of Pittsburgh, quite frankly, are all at the center of this issue. So if the residents, the neighbors of Homewood decide to, all right, we're going to file these reports through Conscious Unbiased, what does that look like? What does that process look like for them? Like, and I'm thinking about accessibility and such, but also like, then what is their return after that? Like, what are they directly being able to benefit off of from filing those reports?
Currently, the system as is isn't set up to take in community response, but that is our next wave. And what they would get is a generated root cause analysis. So there are general reports that are free. The survey, you can download the survey so you don't have to go through the technology to go through the survey one by one. We will be providing a stationary survey as well, and providing folks on how to use things like that. Basically, how can we hold our communities accountable? How can we, because what's happening externally in the community is internally driven by PWSA. So then how do we target the internal operations of PWSA to bring light to how something like this can happen inside that community? A lot of my research is showing like there are folks who aren't whistleblowers, but they're ringing the alarms and no one's listening. And I do believe something like what you'll start seeing is people leaving PWSA from working from there. This is the cycle. Something comes out, it's making headlines, it makes waves. Now people resign. Why don't we get it before the resignations happens and before someone's basement's flooded for 5 years? That's where I'm saying. So at the time for the next wave, you'll be able to get a report as to like interventions to be choose. We hopefully have a forum so you can connect with other folks on like-minded issues like yourself. And also be able to tie that to like a societal change as well. Be able to say this produces over here without having to go through the research to justify it and validate it. It's valid from your voice. We don't need to continue to research things we already know.
Yes, absolutely. Ever's funny. Absolutely, absolutely. So did I hear you say like with at the current state, like the system works, if the Homewood residents like, completed the survey, are they going to receive a report of the people like who else has reported the same thing? Is that what I'm hearing, or I heard something different? Can you clarify that?
Yeah, so a root cause report is not situational, it's systemic. So we're actually looking at the event. What is the event? The event's the water crisis. In that intake, interviewing people that this has happened to, interviewing the folks who work internally, and then requesting that top-down data. So there's multiple data touch points that goes into the technology. And then that root cause report says, here's the event, here's the stakeholders, here's what's happening, here are the interventions. And a general one without the top down, the interventions are, and who's analyzing this are the folks who are impacted. It is not, I'm designing it, so it's not good that I would be analyzing as well, but I have teams of analysts from marginalized communities and communities impacted to help process those interventions as well. I'm just the specialist. So I design the tools to make sure that they respond to how the folks analyzing it, what they need for them to be resolved in the situations. So there will be nothing to say that I'm the person who did this report, but there is an opportunity to say, like, if you would like to be connected or you would like to connect with, that is something that we want to do on the back end and provide a forum so people can do that type of networking themselves without the platform. But currently right now we are doing some kind of mediation between companies and their employees without them knowing the companies reached out to us or the employees reached out to us.
Wow, that's amazing. That's super dope. And I'm thinking again about organizing, like how important that data is, because that's, you can be gaslit into oblivion, and that's typically what happens in communities versus systems, right? It's like, what are you talking about? There's no issues here. We don't know what you mean. We're very diverse. We're very whatever. And it's like, no, but the backdrop of it is like all of these things that they're like, you see the big hole and they're like shoveling dirt over, So that's amazing. Like that sounds very, very powerful, not only as a tool and usage, but I can see that being, again, like accountability is love. And thinking about like how individuals and, collective communities are impacted by systems. And for so long, we've thrown our bodies at systems. And so it sounds like you built a system in order to combat these systems. Is that correct?
Yes, that is exactly what I've done. I'm designing new systems is how I'm looking at it. And I would love to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But we only have one life to live. And change management is also about effectiveness and efficacy, and also like not recreating wheels. So my philosophy is, if it works, let's keep it, but let's trash what doesn't work. And we know these systems don't work, but we know that we'll lose a lifetime if we just act like we can ignore this and not exist with it. So yeah, I'm helping folks. I'm designing these systems, but I'm helping folks to rework the system as it cycles through as well.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Thank you for that work, because it is necessary. So if say, folks are listening to this podcast or getting to know, hearing about what you do and support it, is there a way for folks to get involved, to learn more, to connect with you all, to be supportive or part of what you're doing?
Yeah, there's so many asks, but I will stay very focused on the audience. So, firstly, wherever you work at, please go to consciousunbias.com and review your company. Do not use your employees' technology if you use your computer or phone. If you don't have anything outside of that, please just reach out to us at contact at contact at consciousunbias.com, and we will figure out another way. Again, the accessibility piece, at my capacity, I'm also building an ethical company. So building is a little bit different over here, and accessibility is costly, but it's something that I plan for. So please reach out to me there, and we'll figure out how to do it. But essentially, everybody go review your company, especially if you work for any of these $1 billion companies in the health, education, or tech spaces in the region. And then also, we're looking for ambassadors. So if you're a person who wants to work on this and share the information, I'm looking for support to professional organizations, affinity groups, basically any organizations that are focused on supporting marginalized people in any capacity, professional, personal development, or representing people in their communities to do that as well. So ambassadors, or just go complete the index itself.
Word up, word up. Thank you so much. Before we cut out today, I'm super thankful that we got a chance to connect and do the show. I know, Amber, you and I have been trying to connect for forever, and it's usually me. I can't even lie. It's not like we can't make it work. It's me. It's always me. But so I'm glad to like have this conversation with you and learn a little bit more in depth of what you've been doing. So is there anything else you would like to say before we cut out today?
I think a problem I am having stressing is the ownership of the data. Companies do not own this data. Even if they pay me $1 million, which they're going to do, it is not, there's not a dollar sign in the world for me to turn over my data. So I want to stress that everything that comes out of my company that goes into another company is not data that they can identify people. Objectivity is I'm very good at root cause reports, but I'm very good at asking objective questions and focusing on the systems. So even though we're asking questions that are open-ended, that data is still being quantified and put back into to be objectified, essentially, to make it part of the system. So the open-ended questions and you giving me your email address does not mean the company will have any of those things. This is something that is unique to my company. Again, I am an ethical organization. A lot of these companies, they do buy their data. They do give raw data. Even if they don't give it at the beginning of the consultation, they give it at the end. My consulting, I don't do raw data. You don't get raw data from me. And the folks that sign on with me understand that, and they struggle with it, but they understand it. Once they see what comes from it, it makes sense. So I want to stress that it is anonymous. We do not share your data. There is no raw data. You can give me every person in your company's name with every report, any index you do, and they will not be able to tie that back to a person. So I want to stress that enough, because I don't think I'm good at talking about how that happens, but how other companies do it as well.
Word up. Thank you so much thank you for iterating that and reiterating that. It's super important, because folks are like, I'm not going to give you my name, my number, my address, because they're going to find a way to get it, and it's going to be a problem for me. So it's important to know that that's not happening there, and there's intention behind it not happening there. I appreciate it. So thank you again, Amber, for taking the time out today to talk with us and talk about what it is that you do. I'm looking forward for the growth and the flourishing of your company, because it's so necessary, because the growth of your company absolutely means the growth of the city, right? Like, and then us as a whole. Super dope. Mad dope. Thank you all again for joining us for another episode of the See Us podcast. I mentioned a little bit, our next episode is going to feature Miss Courtney Tompkins. Her son is Savance Williams. He's being pressured currently to take a plea deal. He's been in ACJ for the past year waiting a trial. He has court coming up August 3rd. Supposedly, we'll see if that goes through. But there's been no full investigation and a lot of other weird things that's been going on with that case. So please definitely plan to tune in next Sunday, at 5 p.m. As always, again, I'll be talking to Miss Courtney Tompkins. She will be here speaking on behalf of her son with these wild things that are going on. And if there's anything that you can do, will do, or want to do, that's when we'll ask you to do that there. As a reminder, if you are someone who needs a little bit of help with rent or utilities, please do go to covidrentrelief.alleghenycounty.us and apply right there. The application is super simple. But if you do need additional support, you can check out the Wellness Collective. We have a drop-in center at 337 Fifth Avenue in McKeesport, PA, 15132. But if that's too far for you, no worries. There are drop-in centers all over the county. But we're cool, so you might as well come and check us out. So again, it's 337 Fifth Avenue, McKeesport, PA 15132. We're open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6 on most days. Thursdays is 12 to 8. We also have a food pantry and a closet with cool things, really dope things. I don't have whack stuff to give to other people because that's whack. So if you want to just drop in and grab something, or if you want to just drop by and hang out, or if you want to drop in, apply for rent relief and utility relief, you can do all of those things with us. So that'll be that. And that's all I got for today. I hope y'all have a beautiful, beautiful day. If you are someone who has a story to tell, remember that you can hit us up 412-453-6309 or racialjusticeandmedia@gmail.com.